Hey, what's happening, YouTubers? We're back with a brand new action figure review, and this one's going to be a little bit different. It's kind of be like a DC retro review, because we're going to travel back a few years ago to 2015, back when Mattel still had the DC Multiverse license. And the figure we're going to take a look at is this Earth 23 Superman. Now, you might have seen this figure before. This is one of my pickups when me and the Sheen went to Gateway Comics and Toys, and I picked this up for a decent price. But this figure always kind of like piqued my interest, because I'd never seen an Earth 23 Superman figure before, up until that time when I went to Gateway Comics and Toys. But I'm happy to pick it up. But without further ado, like we always do, let's go ahead and take a look at the box art first. So prior to buying this figure, I had about 2 other DC Multiverse figures from Mattel, I think. And the box art was a lot different. It was like the bluish box art. It had a more flat bottom on the box. And this one, I don't really like this little curved edge here, just because if I'm an inbox collector, I don't like this little... something about that I just don't like. But in terms of box art, you see the image of Earth 23 Superman, and this is part of their Collect and Connect Justice Buster. Don't know what the hell that is. If anybody knows, let me know in the comments below. And what's interesting is on the top of the box, it says DC Comics Multiverse. When comparing it to like the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse line, it's just straight up DC Multiverse. And this one says DC Comics Multiverse. I'm not sure if that's like an ongoing thing when Mattel had it back in the day, or they changed it to like DC Movies Multiverse or some crap like that. But one thing I'll say, and this is kind of a hot take, I do appreciate the McFarlane Toys box art more than Mattel, because in my opinion, Mattel went through so many different changes when it came to their boxes, which is fine. It just constantly evolves. Like, for example, another thing I picked up recently, you might have seen in my haul, is this DC Universe, the DC UC thing that Mattel had. To me, this box art looks better than what the Mattel Multiverse one looked like. But I understand why they evolved and used less plastic and all that stuff. But to me, I like the uniformity of the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse boxes. And it's something I don't think Todd McFarlane's ever going to change, which I would be happy, because I like having all the consistencies in terms of, like, if you're an inbox collector, which I am in some cases, because I always buy 2, one to stock and then one to open. Anyways, that's enough about the comparisons of the box art to the McFarlane one. Let's get back to look at the Mattel one. So if we look at the left side of the box art, you can see the image of the Earth 23 Superman. And then on the bottom is like a little bio. It says real name is Kal-El, Calvin Ellis, base of operations, Earth 23 White House. Special abilities, I like how they put U.S. President with powers of flight strength, invulnerability, and heat vision. And from what I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but this character, or this version of Superman, was loosely based off Barack Obama. I could be wrong about that, but from what I remember reading, this was kind of like inspired by Barack Obama. On the back of the box, you see the other figures needed to complete this Justice Buster, which in my opinion looks like a bootleg freaking Hulkbuster. I've never actually seen that before. It just looks like a condensed machine version of Batman's Hulkbuster, because you do see the Batman logo right there. Just someone in the comments below, let me know what the hell that thing is. Anyways, the figures needed to complete it was Batman, Joker, Arrow. I think that's the Arrowverse from the CW. Then Earth 23 Superman, the Flash, and then Reverse Flash. So it looks like Mattel's CNC Collect and Connect. You still needed 6 figures, just like the Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure wave, in order to complete the figures, which is cool. It's something that's like a gimmick that's kind of been consistent over the years. But with McFarlane Toys, I do like how they only require you to have 4 to complete the figure. That's enough of the box art. Let's get Superman out of the box. All right, here's Superman out of the box, and let's take a look at his one accessory that he comes with. It's the left leg of the Justice Buster. Now let's take a look at the figure itself, and let's start with the head sculpt. And, right off the bat, the head sculpt leaves a little bit more to be desired. When comparing it to the actual box art, it lacks a lot more paint deco and paint applications to make it look like how we saw it in the comics. But this is 2015, so I'm giving it a little bit of leeway here. But the head sculpt is, it's okay. When we look at the rest of the figure, like the paint application, I mean, it's pretty basic. The Superman logo is unique. It's a lot different, far different from what we've seen traditionally on Superman, on his emblem. And in terms of like the sculpting of the body, it's one that seems to be reused a lot, because I noticed it on my Superman figure for the DCUC one I just picked up. I think Shartimus Prime coined the phrase like the DCUC T-joints just aesthetically doesn't look good. And I just reviewed recently the Invincible Omni-Man, and I think Diamond Select Toys uses the same type of mechanism. I never really understood it, but it just, you can see it's obviously like dated when you look at the engineering of it. But in terms of like the sculpting, like the bulkiness of it, yeah, this is what you would imagine Superman to look like. And when looking at the cape, for those of you wondering, like, why does it look like this? This is supposed to represent the cape. I think it's supposed to like orbit around him or like float around him. It's not supposed to be attached to him like the traditional Superman cape. It's actually supposed to just be floating around him. So I get what Mattel was going for. I'm not really a fan of it aesthetically, but it's still I still appreciate the effort. Again, this is 2015 engineering, so I'm giving a little bit of leeway there. Now, when testing out the articulation, as you can see, it has the ab crunch, and let's see how effective it is. Whoa, it's barely effective at all. So when I zoom in here, you can see it stops right there because that's where the cut is. So you're more prone to bending it or like moving it back more like that, but when crunching forward, not really that much. So that's about as much crunch as you get forward. And then it does have a waist swivel, but it is hindered by his belt. So I don't want to move it too much just because the figure is a little bit old and I don't want it to break right off the bat. He does have single jointed elbows. And let's see how much range he gets. So about 90 degrees. It does have a bicep swivel and then has a shoulder swivel as well. There are thigh swivels, but it's like lower on the thighs, so that's pretty interesting. Normally, unlike a Marvel Legend or a DC figure, even from McFarlane's line, you'll notice the thigh cut, like just to grab Geralt of Rivia, is usually at the top. What Mattel did, and I get it because this is like a reuse buck from like 2008, is they added that cut right down here. I'm not sure how effective that really is though, because, well, yeah, because there's no ankle pivot, because I noticed that too. There is an ankle articulation, just no ankle pivot. So yeah, it's single jointed knees, but I don't understand having the cut that low on the thigh as opposed to having it up here. I just don't understand having the thigh cut that low. Again, this is a mold from, I think, 2008, like even maybe older than that. So there must have been a reason back then why they had it so low. And then when it comes to the T-joints, I'm not going to try and push this one out anymore because I think it's stuck. And the last thing I'd want to do is to break a $40 figure on camera. But just as a sample on his right leg, this is how the T-joint goes out. It just looks weird to me nowadays compared to like a modern figure in engineering, but I get why like this was the way they had it engineered back then, so it makes sense. And the thing though about the belt, it hinders a lot of articulation. It hinders it on the waist swivel, and it also hinders it on the leg kicking out, because you can see it just stops right there. All right, but what I want to do is this figure came out in 2015, and even though it's from 2015, the engineering is probably from more like 2008. I do want to compare it with a figure that was using same type of engineering back in the day. Even though this is a current figure, it is using the Bucky Cap mold from 2012, I think it is. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. But you can see when it comes to ab crunch, like this one was virtually useless. Like you can't really move it much. And with Hasbro, they had their ab crunch down. And again, I get they're two different characters, but also the thigh cut was much higher, and it also had a cut right here at the boot, which is pretty useful, and then it also had ankle pivot. Now, I know for budget reasons, Mattel probably skimped out and kept reusing this buck just because it was so convenient, because it is a Superman figure, and Superman figures typically have the same build. And as much as collectors like to groan about Hasbro reusing parts or reusing body molds, it's clear Mattel did it a crap ton of times, because when I'm looking at this Superman figure that I picked up from Toy Department, which is the DC-UC Superman. This figure came out in 2008, and you can clearly see... Whoopsies. Sorry, psych. All right, you can clearly see that it is using the same body mold as this Superman. All right, now we're going to jump right into size comparisons. And first size comparison here is Superman Earth 23 next to a couple of McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figures. On the left, we have the Action Comics 1000 Superman, and on the right, we have the DC Rebirth Superman. And yes, I get it, they're a different scale, and you can clearly tell in the size comparison. And just looking at this size comparison, you can clearly tell that current DC Multiverse figures in the McFarlane Toys line don't scale with Mattel figures, and vice versa. Next size comparison here is standing next to some more McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figures. We have General Zod on the left and John Stewart Green Lantern on the right. And the reason why I showcase this John Stewart Green Lantern is because I've seen a lot of people on the DC Multiverse pages customize this head sculpt on a regular Superman body and like make their own Earth 23 figure, which is pretty cool. And also, just as a side note, this is still one of my favorite McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figures. And last size comparison, here he is standing next to some more McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figures. But this case, I think this is one where the scale size works. We have Bizarro on the left and then Lobo on the right. And I think this works just because typically their characters have been much larger than Superman. So I think this works. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Alright, some overall thoughts on the figure is I like it. Despite all its flaws and aesthetically looking dated in terms of like the articulation cuts and engineering, I still like this figure. Because as far as I know, there isn't any other Earth 23 Superman figures out there apart from this one that Mattel made. I could be wrong. If I am, please let me know in the comments below. But I think this is the only one that's out there. I don't like the engineering of the cape, but I get why they did it that way. I give him A for effort, but I also don't like that rendition of the cape of Superman. I still like this though, and it's nice to have this in my display and collection. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, YouTubers. What do you think about this figure? And also, again, shout outs to Gateway Comic and Toys where I picked this up. They're one of those shops just like Tashi Station and just like Toy Department that caters to collectors and have some dope pieces in there as well. So if you're ever in the Fredericksburg area in Virginia, I highly recommend checking them out. And like always, YouTubers, if you like what you see, be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Figure. So on the right side, or no, sorry, the left side of the figure. No, what the fuck am I saying?